Hedy Lamarr. Hedy Lamarr's name is often synonymous with beauty, but her life was a labyrinth of contradictions and hidden brilliance. Born in Austria to Jewish parents, she fled Europe in the late 1930s as the shadow of Nazism loomed over her homeland. Hollywood embraced her as a screen siren, but few knew that behind her glamorous exterior was a mind that would change the world. During World War II, Hedy co-invented a frequency-hopping communication system designed to prevent enemy interception of Allied torpedoes. This invention, dismissed by the military at the time, would later become the foundation for modern technologies like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. Her Jewish heritage, however, was something she rarely spoke of publicly, likely a survival mechanism in an industry that often erased or downplayed such identities. Hedy's escape from Austria was not just a physical journey, but a symbolic one, leaving behind a world that sought to destroy her heritage while building a new identity in a land that demanded conformity. Her later years were marked by financial struggles and isolation, a stark contrast to her early fame. The woman who dazzled audiences on screen was also a refugee, a scientist, and a survivor of a world that sought to erase her brilliance. Sylvia Sidney. Sylvia Sidney's career was a study in resilience, both on and off the screen. Born to Russian Jewish immigrant parents in New York City, she grew up in a world that often viewed her heritage as a barrier. By the 1930s, she had become one of Hollywood's most sought-after actresses, known for her roles in gritty crime dramas. Yet her Jewish identity was something the studios rarely acknowledged, and she was often cast as the quintessential American girl. Behind the scenes, Sylvia faced the pervasive anti-Semitism of the era, both in Hollywood and beyond. Her work with Alfred Hitchcock in the mid-1930s marked a turning point, as she became one of the first Jewish actresses to collaborate with the legendary director. Later in life, she found a second wave of fame in Tim Burton's films, including Beetlejuice, where her sharp wit and commanding presence captivated a new generation. Despite her success, Sylvia's life was marked by personal struggles, including a turbulent marriage and the challenges of aging in an industry that often discarded its stars. Her story is one of quiet defiance, a woman who refused to let her heritage or the prejudices of her time define her. Lauren Bacall. Lauren Bacall's sultry voice and magnetic presence made her an icon of Hollywood's golden age, but her story is one of complexity and quiet strength. Born Betty Joan Persky in the Bronx, to Jewish immigrant parents, she grew up in a household shaped by the struggles and resilience of her heritage. Her rise to fame was meteoric, beginning with her unforgettable debut in To Have and Have Not in the mid-1940s. Her marriage to Humphrey Bogart became one of Hollywood's most celebrated unions, but it also placed her under intense scrutiny. Lauren's Jewish identity was something she carried with pride, even as the industry often pressured stars to downplay their roots. Few know that she was a cousin of Shimon Peres, the former president of Israel, and she maintained a lifelong connection to Jewish causes. Her autobiography revealed the emotional toll of navigating fame, love, and loss, as well as the challenges of being a Jewish woman in a world that often demanded assimilation. Lauren's legacy is not just her films, but her unwavering sense of self, a woman who balanced the demands of stardom with the quiet dignity of her heritage. Edward G. Robinson. Edward G. Robinson's on-screen persona as a tough-talking gangster belied a life of intellectual depth and quiet activism. Born Emanuel Goldenberg in Romania, he immigrated to the United States with his Jewish family to escape the violent pogroms of the early 20th century. By the 1930s, he had become one of Hollywood's most recognizable faces, starring in films like Little Caesar and Key Largo. Yet his Jewish identity was something he rarely discussed publicly, a reflection of the pervasive anti-Semitism of the era. Behind the scenes, Edward was a passionate art collector and a vocal advocate for Jewish refugees during World War II. He donated significant portions of his wealth to help those fleeing Nazi persecution, a fact that remained largely hidden during his lifetime. His career took a hit during the McCarthy era, as his political activism and support for Jewish causes made him a target of suspicion. Despite being blacklisted, Edward never wavered in his convictions, and his later roles reflected a depth and humanity that mirrored his own life. The man who played gangsters on screen was in reality a quiet hero, using his fame and fortune to fight for justice and preserve his heritage. Louise Reiner. Louise Reiner's career was as brief as it was brilliant, but her life was a testament to resilience and reinvention. Born in Germany to a Jewish family, she fled Europe in the 1930s as the Nazi regime tightened its grip. Hollywood welcomed her with open arms, and she became the first actress to win back-to-back Academy Awards for her performances in The Great Ziegfeld and The Good Earth. Yet her success came at a cost. Louise often clashed with studio executives who sought to control her career and downplay her Jewish identity. Her refusal to conform led to her being labeled difficult, and her career in Hollywood was effectively over by the early 1940s. What many don't realize is that Louise used her fame to speak out against the atrocities in Europe, becoming one of the few stars of her time to openly criticize the Nazi regime. Her later years were spent in quiet obscurity, but she never stopped advocating for the causes she believed in. Louise's story is one of defiance, a woman who refused to let the industry or the world dictate her identity. Her legacy is not just her awards, but her courage in the face of unimaginable challenges. Paul Mooney. Paul Mooney was a master of transformation, a man who could disappear into any role, but his real-life story was just as compelling as the characters he portrayed. Born Mechelem Meyer Weisenfreund in Austria-Hungary to a Yiddish-speaking Jewish family, he immigrated to the United States as a child. His upbringing in a Jewish immigrant community in New York City shaped his worldview and his art. Mooney's career was defined by his ability to embody complex, often marginalized figures, from Louis Pasteur to Émile Zola. What few realize is that his Jewish identity was not just a background detail, it was central to his work. In the life of Émile Zola, he portrayed a man fighting against anti-Semitism during the infamous Dreyfus Affair, a role that resonated deeply with his own experiences of prejudice. Mooney was one of the few actors of his time who openly embraced his Jewish heritage, even as Hollywood pressured stars to assimilate. His meticulous preparation for roles, including learning new languages and adopting physical transformations, set a standard for method acting long before it became a trend. Despite his fame, Mooney often retreated from the spotlight, preferring the quiet dignity of his personal life to the glitz of Hollywood. His legacy is one of integrity, both as an artist and as a man who never forgot where he came from. Theda Bara. Theda Bara was Hollywood's first femme fatale, a silent film star whose exotic image captivated audiences and defined the archetype of the vamp. But behind the carefully constructed persona was Theodosia Burr Goodman, a Jewish woman from Cincinnati, Ohio. Her stage name, an anagram of Arab death, was a marketing ploy designed to obscure her Jewish roots and create an air of mystery. Studio executives fabricated an elaborate backstory, claiming she was the daughter of an Egyptian princess, but the truth was far more ordinary and far more revealing. Theda's Jewish parents were immigrants from Poland and Switzerland, and her upbringing was far removed from the exotic fantasy her publicists created. Her career skyrocketed in the 1910s, with films like A Fool There Was, but the advent of sound films and changing tastes led to her rapid decline. Most of her films were lost in a fire in the late 1930s, erasing much of her cinematic legacy. Theda's story is a haunting reminder of how Hollywood's obsession with image often forced stars to hide their true identities. She was a trailblazer, but her career was also a cautionary tale about the cost of fame in an industry that demanded reinvention at any price. John Garfield. John Garfield was the original Hollywood rebel, a man whose raw talent and brooding intensity redefined what it meant to be a leading man. Born Jacob Julius Garfinkel in New York City to Russian Jewish immigrants, he grew up in the tenements of the Lower East Side. His tough upbringing shaped his persona, both on and off the screen. Garfield's rise to fame in the 1930s and 1940s was meteoric, with standout performances in films like The Postman Always Rings Twice and Body and Soul. What set him apart was his willingness to tackle roles that reflected his own struggles, including characters who were outsiders or underdogs. Garfield's Jewish identity was a quiet but constant presence in his life and work. He was one of the first actors to openly address anti-Semitism in Hollywood, both through his choice of roles and his activism. His involvement with progressive causes made him a target during the McCarthy era, and he was blacklisted for refusing to name names. The stress of the blacklist took a toll on his health, and he passed away at a young age, leaving behind a legacy of courage and authenticity. Garfield's life was a testament to the power of art to challenge prejudice and reveal uncomfortable truths. Betty Grable. Betty Grable was the ultimate pinup girl, a symbol of hope and glamour during World War II, but her story is far more layered than her iconic image suggests. Born Elizabeth Ruth Grable in St. Louis, Missouri, she had Jewish ancestry through her mother's side, a fact that was rarely acknowledged during her lifetime. Grable's rise to fame in the 1930s and 1940s was fueled by her roles in musicals and comedies, where her charm and talent shone. Her famous pinup photo, showing her in a bathing suit with her back to the camera, became a morale booster for American troops overseas. Yet behind the scenes, Grable faced the pressures of being a woman in an industry that often valued appearance over substance. Her Jewish heritage was downplayed by the studios, who crafted an all-American image for her, but it remained a quiet part of her identity. Grable was one of the highest-paid actresses of her time, a testament to her enduring popularity, but her personal life was marked by challenges, including a difficult marriage and the struggle to maintain her career as she aged. Her story is one of resilience, a woman who became an icon while navigating the complexities of fame and identity. Kirk Douglas. Kirk Douglas was a titan of Hollywood's golden age, a man whose rugged charisma and intense performances defined an era. Born Isser Danielovich in New York to Belarusian Jewish immigrant parents, he grew up in poverty, the only boy among 6 sisters. His Jewish heritage was a cornerstone of his identity, though he often had to navigate an industry that demanded assimilation. Douglas's rise into fame in the 1940s and 1950s was meteoric, with iconic roles in films like Spartacus and Paths of Glory. What many don't know is that he was instrumental in breaking the Hollywood blacklist by openly crediting blacklisted screenwriter Dalton Trumbo for Spartacus in the late 1950s, a move that risked his career but helped restore integrity to the industry. Later in life, Douglas reconnected deeply with his Jewish roots, even having a second bar mitzvah at the age of 83. His philanthropy extended to Jewish causes, including funding playgrounds in Israel and supporting Holocaust education. Behind the tough, larger-than-life persona was a man who never forgot his roots, using his fame to fight for justice and preserve his heritage. His story is one of resilience, courage, and an unwavering commitment to his identity. Molly Picon. Molly Picon was a trailblazer, a woman who brought Yiddish theater to the mainstream and became a beloved figure in Hollywood and beyond. Born Małka Opekun in New York to Polish-Jewish immigrant parents, she grew up immersed in Jewish culture, which became the foundation of her career. Picon's early success came in Yiddish-language films like Yidel Mitten Fiddle, and where her comedic timing and charm captivated audiences. As Hollywood began to embrace her talent, she transitioned to English-language films, including her memorable role as Yente the Matchmaker in Fiddler on the Roof. What sets Molly apart is her role as a cultural bridge, preserving Jewish traditions at a time when assimilation was often encouraged. She was one of the few stars who openly celebrated her Jewish identity, using her platform to bring attention to the struggles and joys of Jewish life. Her work during World War II, performing for Jewish refugees and raising funds for relief efforts, added another layer to her legacy. Molly's life was a testament to the power of art to preserve culture and connect communities, a legacy that continues to inspire. Danny Kaye. Danny Kaye was a whirlwind of talent, a man who could sing, dance, act, and make audiences laugh with effortless charm. Born David Daniel Kaminsky in Brooklyn to Ukrainian Jewish parents, he grew up in a Yiddish-speaking household that shaped his comedic sensibilities. Kaye's rise to fame in the 1940s and 1950s was marked by unforgettable performances in films like The Secret Life of Walter Mitty and White Christmas, yet his impact extended far beyond the screen. Kaye was one of the first Hollywood stars to perform in Israel after its founding in the late 1940s, strengthening cultural ties between the Jewish state and the entertainment world. He also became a UNICEF ambassador, using his fame to advocate for children's welfare, a mission deeply rooted in his Jewish values of tikkun olam, or repairing the world. Behind the scenes, Kaye was a perfectionist, often struggling with the pressures of fame and the expectations placed on him. His humor masked a deep sensitivity, a man who uses talent not just to entertain, but to make a difference. Danny Kaye's legacy is one of joy, compassion, and an unshakable connection to his roots. Paulette Goddard. Paulette Goddard was a star who radiated glamour and sophistication, but her life was far more complex than her polished image suggested. Born Marion Levy in New York, she had Jewish ancestry through her father, though this was rarely acknowledged during her career. Goddard's rise in fame was closely tied to her partnership with Charlie Chaplin, starring alongside him in Modern Times and The Great Dictator. The latter film, a bold satire of Adolf Hitler and Nazism, was a rare and daring critique during a time when Hollywood often avoided political controversy. Goddard's Jewish heritage, though downplayed publicly, likely informed her decision to participate in such a project. Beyond her work with Chaplin, she became a leading lady in films like So Proudly We Hail, earning an Academy Award nomination. Her personal life was marked by reinvention, including a marriage to writer Erich Maria Remarque, who also had Jewish roots and was a vocal critic of fascism. Paulette's story is one of quiet defiance, a woman who navigated the pressures of Hollywood while staying true to her convictions. Her legacy is a reminder of the power of art to challenge injustice and inspire change. Sam Jaffe. Sam Jaffe was a character actor whose quiet intensity and distinctive voice made him unforgettable, but his life off-screen was just as compelling. Born in New York to Russian Jewish immigrant parents, Jaffe grew up in a household steeped in Jewish culture and intellectual curiosity. His career spanned decades, with standout roles in films like The Asphalt Jungle and Lost Horizon. What many don't realize is that Jaffe was blacklisted during the McCarthy era, a victim of the political paranoia that swept through Hollywood in the mid-20th century. Despite this setback, he made a triumphant return to the screen, earning an Academy Award nomination for his role in The Asphalt Jungle. Jaffe's Jewish identity was a quiet but constant presence in his life, informing his choice of roles and his commitment to social justice. He was also a founding member of the Actors Studio, mentoring future stars like Marlon Brando and James Dean. Jaffe's story is one of resilience, a man who weathered the storms of prejudice and political persecution to leave an indelible mark on Hollywood. His legacy is a testament to the enduring power of talent and integrity. Gertrude Berg. Gertrude Berg was a pioneer, a woman who not only broke barriers but built the very foundation of modern television. Born Tilly Edelstein in New York to Jewish immigrant parents, she grew up in a household steeped in Jewish traditions, which would later become the heart of her work. Berg was the creator, writer, and star of The Goldbergs, a groundbreaking radio and television series that brought the lives of a Jewish American family into millions of homes. What few realize is that she was one of the first women in Hollywood to wield creative control over her projects, a feat almost unheard of in the early 20th century. Her portrayal of Molly Goldberg was not just entertainment, it was a cultural bridge, introducing Jewish customs and humor to a mainstream audience during a time when anti-Semitism was rampant. Behind the scenes, Berg fought tirelessly to keep her show on the air during the McCarthy era, even as her co-star Philip Loeb was blacklisted. She refused to fire him, a decision that cost her dearly but it underscored her unwavering integrity. Gertrude Berg's legacy is not just her work, but her courage, a woman who used her platform to celebrate her heritage and challenge prejudice. Peter Lorre. Peter Lorre's haunting eyes and distinctive voice made him one of Hollywood's most unforgettable character actors, but his real-life story is even more compelling. Born Laszlo Lowenstein in Austria-Hungary to Jewish parents, he fled Europe in the 1930s as the Nazi regime rose to power. Lorre's breakout role in the German film M showcased his chilling ability to portray deeply complex characters, a talent that followed him to Hollywood. What many don't know is that Lorre was one of the first Jewish actors to openly criticize the Nazi regime through his work, even as he faced the personal danger of being a refugee. In films like Casablanca and The Maltese Falcon, he became a symbol of the displaced and the marginalized, roles that mirrored his own experiences. Despite his success, Lorre struggled with being typecast as villains, a reflection of Hollywood's limited view of actors with foreign accents and Jewish heritage. His later years were marked by health challenges and financial difficulties, but his contributions to cinema remain unparalleled. Peter Lorre's life was a testament to resilience, a man who turned his personal struggles into unforgettable art while never forgetting the heritage that shaped him. Ida Lupino. Ida Lupino was a force of nature, a woman who defied the odds to become one of Hollywood's first female directors, but her story is far more layered than her groundbreaking career suggests. Born in London to a family with Jewish ancestry on her father's side, Lupino grew up in a world of privilege that was shattered by the realities of World War II. Her early acting career in the 1930s and 1940s saw her cast as the quintessential femme fatale, with standout roles in films like High Sierra and The Hard Way. Yet, Lupino was never content to stay in front of the camera. In the 1950s, she transitioned to directing, tackling taboo subjects like unplanned pregnancies and gender inequality in films like Not Wanted and The Bigamist. What few realize is that her Jewish heritage, though rarely discussed publicly, informed her commitment to social justice and her willingness to challenge Hollywood's status quo. Lupino's work was decades ahead of its time, a reflection of her fearless intellect and unshakable determination. Her legacy is not just her films, but her role as a trailblazer, a woman who refused to let the limitations of her era define her. Lee J. Cobb. Lee J. Cobb was a powerhouse, a man whose commanding presence and intense performances made him one of the most respected actors of his generation. Born Leo Jacobi in New York to Russian Jewish immigrant parents, he grew up in a household shaped by the struggles and resilience of the Jewish immigrant experience. Cobb's career took off in the 1930s and 1940s, with standout roles in films like On the Waterfront and 12 Angry Men. What many don't know is that his Jewish heritage was a quiet but constant influence on his work, particularly in his portrayal of characters grappling with moral dilemmas and social injustice. During the McCarthy era, Cobb was called before the House Un-American Activities Committee, a moment that tested his principles and nearly derailed his career. He ultimately cooperated with the committee, a decision that haunted him for the rest of his life. Despite this, Cobb's later roles reflected a depth and humanity that mirrored his own struggles. His story is one of complexity, a man who navigated the pressures of fame, politics, and identity while leaving an indelible mark on Hollywood. Shelley Winters. Shelley Winters was a chameleon, a woman who could shift effortlessly between bombshell roles and deeply emotional performances, but her life off-screen was just as fascinating. Born Shirley Shrift in St. Louis to Jewish immigrant parents, she grew up in a working-class household that instilled in her a fierce determination. Winters' rise to fame in the 1940s and 1950s was marked by standout roles in films like A Place in the Sun and The Diary of Anne Frank, the latter earning her an Academy Award. What few realize is that her Jewish identity was not just a background detail, it was central to her life and work. Winters was a vocal advocate for Jewish causes, including raising funds for Israel and supporting Holocaust education. Her role in The Diary of Anne Frank was deeply personal, a reflection of her commitment to preserving the memory of those who perished. Behind the scenes, Winters was known for her sharp wit and unfiltered honesty, qualities that often clashed with Hollywood's polished image of its stars. Her legacy is one of authenticity, a woman who used her talent and fame to challenge stereotypes and honor her heritage. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and comment. Also, consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell to get notified of our newest videos. Thanks for watching.